to all the Creeptastics out there in my group and beyond. I am meeting today with Mackenzie Vee Crompton, and she is a tour guide in York, England for the Ghosts of York. And so I wanted to interview her and just talk about some of the things she's done over there and sees and what her tours over there are all about. I'm super into ghost hunting, ghost tours, all that kind of stuff. So I thought this was really a great thing to talk about, and hopefully maybe someday I'll get to go there and actually take the tour.
Yeah.
So for us here, or for me, it's 10 a.m. So good morning. But for you, it's 5 p.m. Or 4 o'clock.
Just 4 really o'clock. 4:05. Yeah.
So you're wrapping up your work day probably, but.
Just been doing some photos and stuff like that. So yeah.
So let's just start off by talking a little bit about your tour. You are the owner of it.
Yeah, I own the Shadows of York. That's what it's called. The tour.
Shadows of York. Okay.
Yeah, Shadows of York. It's a combination of grim history of York and of ghosts, obviously. And basically I take people around the city centre and tell them all the creepy stories and the history, and any questions that anybody has, then they just ask and I answer as best as I can, and that's it. So far,
awesome.
Everybody's enjoyed it. It's got some nice reviews.
How long have you been doing it?
It will be 6 years this June.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that right now during this pandemic business, you aren't able to do any, or are you just not doing bigger groups? Or
at this moment in time, we're in a full lockdown, which means nobody can work except for essential businesses like supermarkets, hospitals, etc.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no tourism because we're trying to stop the spread.
Right.
It's really, really bad now. It's worse than it ever has been. But last year we had lockdowns, and then we had like what we call tiers. So certain areas in England were allowed to operate, and York was one of them. So I did actually manage to operate, but with much smaller groups last year. So last year was really difficult. So I took to doing a lot of stuff online. And they're all free of the videos, but just ask for donations, and they're you can see all the videos on my Facebook page.
I did see that. I've looked at parts of different ones you have on there. They're awesome.
Thank you.
So yeah, for everybody else, you can go to her Facebook page, and there's all kinds of videos of different tours and things, but please consider donating, because obviously small business owners need all the help they can get right now.
We're not getting anything from the government.
Right. Yeah. So, so tell me a little bit about York itself. I have been to London, but I've never been to York. And so just kind of a basic history of York, or how old things are, things like that, if you could.
Okay. So York was founded in the year 71 AD. So 71 AD was when the Romans came along. So that's nearly 2,000 years ago. They found basically 2 rivers and a lot of land filled with yew trees. And so they named it after the yew trees, which was Iberacum.
Interesting.
So York wasn't called York initially. It was called Iberacum. And then a few hundred years after the Romans, it then became ruled by the Saxons. So it was called Eforwic. And then the Vikings came along and they called it Jorvik. And in York, we've got a Jorvik Viking Centre, because obviously we discovered lots of Viking remains and then recreated a Jorvik, a Jorvik city inside this attraction. And then years later, it would eventually become York. So, but we are the original York. All the other Yorks that came along afterwards. But York was once known as the capital of the north of England. So it goes on from there. So it has a vast history. and a lot of the buildings are still standing. We've got a little bit of a castle left, which we call Clifford's Tower, which is about 1,000 years old. Wow. So, or nearly 1,000 years old. The Minster, our big cathedral, if you will, cathedral. That was completed in the year 1472. So it's very old indeed.
And I've seen pictures of it. It's big. It's like, it looks almost like a Notre Dame or something type of structure.
Yeah, I think it's probably not as high as Notre Dame, but it's certainly in size. I think it's like the third largest Gothic cathedral in Europe.
Wow.
So it's pretty big. And it actually holds something like 80% of all the stained glass out of England.
Wow.
In its windows. Yeah, something like that anyway. I don't know the exact percentage, so don't quote me.
I won't. You're only on Facebook. So how big of a city is York? How many people about?
Oh, about 300,000.
Oh.
It's only small.
That seems humongous to me.
That's the amount of people that lived there, but a lot of them are students, so they go home. So there's probably about 250,000, something like that. But York itself, it's only a little city compared to other cities.
Yeah. How far from London are you?
A long way.
Oh, is it?
2-hour train ride. Yeah. So we're about 2 hours on the train. And if you're lucky, about 4 hours in the car. But usually with traffic, it's about 6 hours.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I was in London and people seem to drive pretty fast over there.
Oh, yeah. But even that's only if there's room, because otherwise there's lots of congestion. So, yeah.
So, okay. So now let's talk about some of the tours you've done. Do you want to just talk about some of the different types of ones you've done? Or the ones you have on your Facebook?
I basically have the same tour on my real tours, but I do change the stories and occasionally take on a different route, depending on the size of the group and whether the city is busy or not, and what the group you get a feel for what they're going to like. Mm-hmm. But on the online stuff, to change it up and make it totally diverse and different, obviously you can go wherever you want. You've not got to worry about groups and things. Mm-hmm. But during lockdown, there's nobody out and about as such, so that's even better. You can go out and show people things that you normally can't get to if there's crowds.
Right, yeah.
Sometimes when you go out and that we've not been in lockdown, unfortunately, you can get a lot of people that like to get in the way. So you do have to keep moving and try and get to areas where people aren't going to interfere with the video. So it's quite tough.
Yeah, I'm sure. The ones I was watching, the last one of your one online, there's like nobody around. So it kind of makes it even spookier.
It is really spooky walking around basically an empty city. It's like the apocalypse, you know?
Yeah, it is weird. So is there certain bigger places you usually include, or places that are famous for being haunted or anything, or? They're not always big buildings. You know, our smallest buildings can be pretty haunted, shops and things like that. It just depends on the reputation and the stories. Mm-hmm. I would say that our most popular ones are like Treasurer's House, which is a big estate house. Then you've got, a pub called the Golden Fleece. It's said to be the most haunted pub. Lots of activity and things there. Then we've got a haunted shop called Oliver Bonas, or Bonus, whatever you want to call it. And but it used to be a haunted house attraction because it was really a real haunted house. So lots of activity goes on there. So nearly every building in York has a story. Probably. They're all so old. Yeah.
Yeah. They all have a history. And pretty much all of York, one way or another, is built on top of a graveyard.
Wow. Yeah, that could cause some haunted goings on.
Yeah.
So have you ever, when you've been doing any tours, have you ever seen any ghosts, anything weird?
Once on tour, in the first year, I had a group of people and I went down to a specific church, and it's probably one of the few churches that actually has a graveyard that's not been built on top of as such. And I only caught it out of the corner of my eye, and I instantly put it down to being a fly or something like that. But all the group had seen it, and they all freaked out, and was like, that was a tall shadow figure. And I went, oh, was it? Shall we move along? And they were like, yeah.
And what about yourself besides tours? Have you yourself experienced anything?
Oh, yeah, lots of things. Too many to say, really. I've worked in a lot of places in York and seen things moving about, or stuff's moved, or I've been touched, or something like that. There's been lots of things. I grew up in an old pub in a little village near York, so I had my first encounters with what looked like a white mist just float past me one day when I was a kid. So that was my first ever experience. And I do go on ghost hunts in York, and they can be pretty weird and wonderful. So
I saw there was quite a few different tour groups and stuff in York in that area. So
there's loads. There's quite a lot of us. Yeah. But many of them tell the same stories as me, but some of them are just comedy. Some of them are utter rubbish. They're good, entertaining stories, but there's no fact behind them.
Right.
And some, like mine, are well researched. And so go on them all, try them all. They're all doing different things. So yeah.
So, and I saw you had one where you worked a video on there where you were working with another person that does tours, I think, too.
She does a gory history tour. Her name's Mad Alice. Okay. And her tour is called the Bloody Tour of York because it's really gory. So it's very tongue-in-cheek, and she's very factual and very good at telling stories as well. Sometimes she'll talk about ghosty stuff, but she usually tries to keep it more history-based.
Yeah. And you did a combined tour, or was it the video? It wasn't actually a tour, it was a video.
No, we have our own tours, but just for the video, because she'd been doing videos and I'd been doing videos, we realised that a lot of people liked us both, and we're like, why don't we come together, because we're friends, and do one online? And everybody freaked out and loved it. And so it was good.
I'm just going to look. I want to say for anyone watching, if they have any questions or anything for you, just put them in the Facebook comments there. So when you are going on these tours, are you in a costume or anything, or is that just the other ones?
No. I wear, if it's really cold, obviously it's a really big, thick black coat, my top hat and a cane, or a cape as well, just to keep the rain off. But in warmer months, I'll probably wear like a black tailcoat or something like that. And if it's really super hot, then I can wear like a corset dress or something, all gothic like. Mm-hmm. And I always wear the top hat or something. And I always have the cane. So I always go out dressed up, and I always wear makeup a lot more than this. I always look the part.
Do you get to go into a lot of places, or are places pretty public that you can go? You're all always outside talking about them?
No, we go outside because unlike a lot of other areas, places close, and you can't go in because the buildings are tiny. You can't get groups of people into them. And a lot of people are very anti-tourists for some reason. Well, they've got their own business, their own attractions and stuff like that. They don't need somebody else bombarding them with people. There's that many of us. Occasionally, some pubs will have a thing with one or two tours where they can do like a drinking tour. Mm-hmm. But again, it's quite difficult because the pubs are tiny. So, and also that the amount of volume of people in the city, it's just impossible if you want to do a day tour like that, or even at the weekend when it's really busy at night. Mm-hmm. So a lot of places close before nighttime, because nighttime is nightlife time. So you get a lot of drunk and disorderly people. So you don't want family attractions open. So we can't go into any buildings, unfortunately, on the tour. But it doesn't matter because the buildings themselves are so atmospheric on the outside. You can imagine what they're like. And it also gives people an incentive to go and visit them during the day.
Right.
So, and most people have either been in them or they're going to go in them anyway. So it's nice for them to actually hear the stories and then go inside the building later.
Yeah. I would totally want to go into some of them the next day if they're haunted-ish.
Yeah.
Do you get families with kids that go on these and things?
Yeah. Some children come along. I don't recommend under 7s because some of the stories can be quite disturbing and kids get scared.
Yeah.
Some are fine, but occasionally you get one that's like loves it when they're like 4 years old, but otherwise they're terrified. But unfortunately, you get a right mix. There's no general rule with children. They're either loving it, or they're terrified and want to go home, or they're thoroughly bored and would much rather play on the mobile phone. But that just depends on the family, I guess, what they like.
Yeah. When did you start realizing that you were kind of into haunted things and creepy things?
I always liked
creepy
things. All my life I liked creepy things, but I've always been interested in ghosts, but I don't really like horror movies as such, unless it's something supernatural. I don't watch slasher stuff. Occasionally, I've watched things like Halloween and all that, but any horror movie that comes out, I just look at it and go, nah, it's not for me. But I've always enjoyed the paranormal, largely because I've had experiences. But I got into the ghost walk scene by accident. Basically, long story short, I worked in between jobs whilst trying to build an acting career. And I then found that I was very good at scare acting. So, as an example, you guys have Universal Studios with Halloween Horror Nights. It's a bit like that, but over here we can, because we haven't got the same volume of people coming in, we can play with them, we can interact with them more, we can tell them stories and things. So it's really quite different. But the same principle of being a scare attraction. Right. And then after that, I went to work at something that's based in York and other cities as well. It's called the Dungeons. And I think they've got dungeons all over the world anyway. So it's like an education on torture and the city wherever it's based at. So I used to work at the York Dungeons. And then there was an advert for a ghost walk guide. And I thought, oh, that sounds fun, storytelling, telling creepy stories, scaring people. So I went to go and work for somebody for a couple of years on and off, and then decided to set up on my own. So it was just an accident, really.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's worked out pretty well. I mean, I'm sure in the summer, busier, I would assume, when it's not a pandemic. But
holidays, it can be really busy. It swings and roundabouts. Sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's quiet. Your busiest period ever is Halloween. October. I'd say the quietest time is, even without COVID, January, February. It's just dead. Yeah.
Understandable. Do you guys get snow there, or is it just cold and rainy? Or
England gets snow, but York, as a rule, just gets a lot of rain and flooding. It's raining right now. But all of England seems to be snowing except for us. But I think that's because we're in a valley. We are literally, we're about 6 feet above sea level. So we don't really, if we get snow, we know that the rest of England is in trouble.
Do you have family members that get into this stuff or anything, or that have joined you on?
I've got a very small family. I've just got mum and my sister and an uncle. Uncle Paul, he lives in London. I don't really see him. Sheridan, my sister, she likes to watch my videos, but she's not been on a tour yet. Mum's been on a tour once, and that's it. I don't have any other family, unfortunately.
But they're not super family. They're not super into it or anything, like you have always been.
Not like me. No, I'm the odd one out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The castle ruins that are there, do they give tours of that place, or can you go into that? Any tourist on a normal?
What, the actual castles? Well, there isn't a castle as such. There's literally Clifford's Tower, which is a museum now, so you can go.
Oh, it's a museum. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we have something called Castle Museum, which used to be part of the castle, or some of its ruins were, but otherwise we call it Castle Museum. because it was known as the Castle Prison. So it was a prison for years that was built around 1705. But the walls of it at the back are part of what used to be the original castle. So that's why they called it the Castle Prison and the Castle Museum. So it's not a castle as such, but there's a reason for the name. Just to confuse you all.
I'm surprised that you have a lot of the city is built on top of graveyards, you said?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So it's been that way for years and years? Those are like...
Yeah, well, more or less. I mean, the railway station, because the city's expanded, when we very first started off, say, for example, the Roman period, there was just a fortress there with a wall going around it. And then they built the civilized section, for families and friends and all that carry on, and the workmen. But you buried your dead on the outside of the settlement. But then over the years, when you expand the city, you're going to build over those graves. And the same thing happened with the Saxons and the Vikings. And as York expands or changes or alters, you just build on top of stuff. For example, our railway station is built on top of a Roman burial ground. And we have, pulled out some of the bodies and stuff and the coffins. It's only last December, just gone, literally last month, that they were doing either a renovation or repair work, and they had to stop work because they found a skeleton. And you always have to get the police involved. Even it doesn't matter how old the body is, they have to get the police involved and the archaeological team. And they instantly looked and went, "Oh yeah, it's another Roman soldier. It's fine." That's just how it is in York. Every time you dig, you go, "Oh, well, which one's this one? Is it medieval, Georgian, Viking? What is it?"
So interesting.
Yeah, but because there's so many bodies, you can't relocate. We've got like 500,000 bodies buried in York, give or take.
Wow.
So, you've had a lot of battles. We've had a lot of diseases, not to rub that in, obviously, but we have. And there's going to be a lot of dead.
What's one of your favorite places to go with a tour? Building or area or whatever?
I like going to the Shambles because everybody always loves that street because it's so authentic and what have you. A lot of people say it looks like the street from Harry Potter, Diagon Alley. Mm-hmm. Despite popular belief, I don't think it's the inspiration for Harry Potter's street. J.K. Rowling has a lot of streets that look like that where she lives in Scotland. So, but it does look like it. The buildings are very close together and stuff. So I like to take people down there. The Minster's always an incredible sight. But I do think I like taking people down to that graveyard that I mentioned earlier with the church, because of how spooky and eerie it is and the story that I tell there. So I'd say that's one of my favorite parts.
Is there much light there when you take a tour there, or you have flashlights, or is it lit up by the church a little bit? Or
it's quite well lit with street lights. So there's only a few areas where it does get quite dark. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's quite well lit. Which is a good thing, really, because even though York is flat, there's a lot of cobbled streets and things like that, right, and trips and slips and falls and things. You don't want that to happen. So, yeah.
Right. Interesting. How many tours do you think you do, like a year?
Oh, God, I don't know. It depends.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I usually operate about Thursday, Friday, Saturday as a general rule, but sometimes we'll do 2 a night. And sometimes we'll do more during the week, during the busy periods like school holidays and stuff like that. But It really depends on if the book. And also I do private tours, so I couldn't tell you, but quite a lot.
Yeah, keeps you busy. Do you have others that work for you then, giving tours to, or is it just you?
Just me, but occasionally if I get a group booking, like a school group or something, and I'm not available, then I might hire one of my friends who already does a ghost walk or something in York. So I know that they'll get a good show. But it's very rare. It's usually me that does it because it's my business and I want people to experience what I advertise, which is me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long do they usually last? A couple hours or something?
About an hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, an hour and a half. Your mind's blown with the amount of information I've given you by that point. So an hour and a half is long
sure.
enough.
Did it take you a long time to memorize all the facts and the years and all that kind of stuff? I would have a hard time with that, I think.
Yeah, it's taken years and years. And even now, I'm still learning. I mean, I've learned an awful lot from working in the museums in York, because I used to work in a couple of the museums. And a fortune on books, and I spent a lot of money on books this last year, and I've recently started doing some online courses on not just about York but history in general, because it all applies.
Right.
And so in order to do that job you have to have an interest. I don't think the other tour guides research the same. I think they just know the stories and just tell you the stories, but because mine's very historical and I like to do the online stuff and people ask me questions, I like to be able to give them an answer. Right. So, yeah.
I never had much of an interest in history growing up, like in classes or whatever. I didn't really get into history much at all. And then when I went to Europe a few years ago, it was just, it was just so fascinating. I think it's something about the buildings and seeing those buildings in person and hearing some of the stories and realizing how long ago this all was, and how their lives were just so different in so many ways. And it's really fascinating. I can't wait to go back. I hope as soon as things open back up, I can go back to Europe. And there's so many things to see. We only stayed in London pretty much for the tour, because it was like one of these whirlwind 7 countries in 10 days type of thing, so it was like see a lot, all a bunch of highlights and see a lot, and it was awesome. But if I go back, I want to take a little more time, spend a good week in one town or something.
That's the best way to do it. There's so much to see and do and learn, and
let me just check and see if there's any questions or anything on here. Oh, just that Virginia's on. Hi, Virginia.
Hi, Virginia.
Oh, and Judy, my friend Judy's on there too. So if anyone, I want to turn it off now because that Virginia's on. There's like a delay. So if anyone out there has any questions, feel free to write them on there. And Mackenzie is also in our group, the Creeptastics. So I'm sure if anyone wanted to post a question or anything like that, you would tag her in it, and she'll have you been to the US ever? Or?
Yeah, once, and I was meant to go last year as well, but everything happened, as you know. I went in 2016 to Disney World and Universal Studios in Florida. I do want to travel around America, but it's just so expensive for us to go out there and do everything and come back. It's the flights and things that's the killer, and tickets, obviously. Right. And I was meant to be doing it all over again last September, but as I say, the pandemic hit and nobody could go anywhere or do anything. But so that's my only experience of America, really. But you're having an interesting day today, aren't you?
We'll have to, I don't even know if that's started yet, or I'm sure it's going to be an all-day affair on TV. So it's been a little tiring just hearing nonstop. It's just been nonstop, about it. So I don't even like to turn the TV on most days, but I do plan on going onto your Facebook page and watching some more of your videos. So for those who have just joined us or missed the beginning, what's the name of your Facebook page again?
Shadows of York.
Okay. Shadows of York, and you have multiple videos on there of you doing different ghost tours.
Yeah. History and stuff like that.
And again, so I just want to say to anyone watching that if you do go there and watch some of them, please consider making a donation. There's a PayPal link on there to donate and support small businesses during this pandemic time. And I really appreciate you coming on here and meeting with me. I know it was all kind of thrown together last minute, so it was kind of like a rush and everything.
Oh my God, I'm not ready.
We had our time zones a little bit screwed up. I thought it was an hour later there than it was, and all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, it's time." And she's like, "I'm not ready," but it all worked out well. We got it done. So thanks again, and I hope to see you around the Creeptastics site some more. And,
definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
The one thing I will just mention is on those videos, occasionally when I do a live, just be careful that you don't click any links that other people post, because there's a lot of those scammers out there.
Oh, yes.
You don't pay to watch the videos. The videos are free, but if you want to make a donation, then I will put, Shadows of York will post the link, and it'll simply say what it is with no numbers or anything in it. So don't get conned.
Yeah, I was surprised there's a lot of virtual tour things going on Facebook, probably because of everybody not being able to do anything. And some of them are real, but some of them are not. I signed up for one a couple months ago, and you had to register, and I'm like, okay, I put my name in. Well, then it wanted a credit card and it was like, just to make sure you're like a real person or something like that. And I'm like, what?
Don't do it. Yeah.
Well, I did it because I'm stupid.
Don't do it. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
And within like 10 minutes, my credit card company called me. It said on there they weren't going to charge me, but then within 10 minutes, the company called and said they charged me and blah, blah, blah. So don't do that. But anyway, so thanks again, and have a good evening, and we will see you around on the Creeptastic site some more, I'm sure.
Yeah, at some point. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care, and thank you everybody for hearing me. All right.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.